Welcome back to the Engler Journey Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Frenzen, and I am so excited to welcome you back for another episode of Celebrating Success, Embracing Failure, and Inspiring the Entrepreneur Inside of You. This season, we are diving into the stories of Nebraska entrepreneurs who proved to be resilient in the midst of the pandemic. There were many who started or pivoted to a different direction in their company, and this season, we're diving into those stories specifically. We see the resilience of people and entrepreneurs in the midst of the pandemic, and we call this podcast the Engler Journey for a reason. It is a journey. Courtney Nelson is in the studio today to share her story and her family's story of how they made a difference in their community by creating moments. So Courtney, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and what your major is.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Courtney Nelson, and I will be graduating in December with a degree in Mechanized Systems Management, and I'm originally from a farm near Monroe here in Nebraska.
Awesome. So tell us what you did when COVID happened. We know that classes were canceled in March, and then a lot of students went home or went other places. So tell us what that was like for you and how you felt in all of that.
Yeah, so my first instinct was to go home, and so I ran home right away. I'm pretty sure that same Thursday that they announced classes were canceled because I didn't have class on that Friday, I remember. So I went home and I stayed home until, at the time I worked at the Department of Ag here in Lincoln, and I stayed until Kristen required me to come back in May, just like part-time. So I just ran home and didn't want anything to do with the big city. I was literally at the time convinced COVID was all over Lincoln for no reason, but I was scared. I didn't know what was going on, so kind of got sucked into what they were telling us on the news a little bit. But
yeah. And what did you do when you went home? What was your day-to-day like?
So I would kind of start in the morning and do some homework and different things that need to be done for school, which was really challenging just because for so long I had established that home, like Monroe home, was where I relaxed. And I did not take my book bag home over breaks or weekends or anything, and I would never do homework there. So all of a sudden I had to retrain my brain to set up a desk at our kitchen table, which was really awkward and weird, and then just start doing homework because you couldn't do anything else while you were, you couldn't go anywhere else. So that was a transition. And then also I had not spent an extended period of time home since my summer between my freshman and sophomore year. And at the time I was a junior, I think, when we all went home for COVID. So it was just a big transition with my family of four living in the same household again. We would argue a lot and do different things just because everyone was stressed. But back to the day-to-day, we just spend some time working in the morning, and I would podunk around a lot and not get a lot done all the time. And then I would try to spend the afternoons outside with my family or take a walk with my dog. But there really was no routine. It was just me flying by the seat of my pants trying to figure everything out.
Totally. How did the experience of the pandemic differ from being in Lincoln to going home to Monroe, Nebraska? And tell us what the population of Monroe is as well while you're at it.
Yeah, so Monroe, the sign says 284, so I would say between 250 and 300 people are there. So not a lot going on, but thankfully we're close to Columbus. But yeah, so it was just different because when I'm on campus, I kind of treat school like a job. So I'll come down to campus every day, Monday through Friday, between 8 and 9, and I'll stay until 4:30 or 5 every single day. So even in Lincoln, I don't do much schoolwork at my apartment, which some people can't wrap their heads around. But if you stay disciplined, you can really do it. And all of my discipline kind of went out the window when I went home in March. So it was just really different. And then you get to do different things when you're out in the country on the farm. You can go for walks and not see people forever, and you can just have all these pretty views and see the sunset. So it was kind of nice in that regard to be able to see some more naturey things again, but just because it was so uplifted and not in the original plan, I was supposed to be in Lincoln, I kind of panicked a little bit, but
yeah, I think that's probably how a lot of other students felt as well. So in all of this, what is a moment that you will never forget from your experience of going home and being there in the midst of doing school and working at the same time during the pandemic?
Yeah, so One thing that is it's related, but it's not specific to the question, is I remember our local cafe in Genoa, so I live between Genoa and Monroe. They would do takeout on I don't even know, we'll just say like a Tuesday night or something. Like they would do a special just because they couldn't stay open.
Yeah.
And my brother and I went into town to pick up the food, and we walked into the cafe, and all of the tables and chairs were not just empty, but they were just all shoved into the corner because they couldn't be used. And just the fact that these small towns, like it had trickled into these small towns and like made all of us start to think that this was real. I just remember being like, oh my gosh, this is happening and I don't know what's happening. But that was probably a really defining moment. But just getting to experience it all in a small town setting was really weird because I feel like normally we just do our own thing in a small town and we just ignore what's going on in the world. So to see the world trickle its way into these small towns was pretty crazy.
Very, very unique.
Yeah.
Where did you see the resilience of your community in the midst of this?
We would do, so I'll go with our small town community and then I'll kind of talk about the communities that I have in Lincoln. So at home, I already mentioned that the cafe would do like a random night. They would do takeout food. But then there's a caterer in Genoa that every Wednesday she started doing pickup meals. So we would just have a big drive-through. It was in the parking lot of the Catholic church in town, and you could just pay. It was $25, and you'd get a meal for 4 people in theory. And it was just like a home-cooked meal every Wednesday. So that kind of became our thing, and I would look forward to Wednesdays because you got to go to town to go pick up this meal. So that was really cool because tons of people did it. Like she had to cap out at, I don't know, 50 or 60 orders or something like that, and the line would just be cool.
Wow.
So that was our human interaction for the week. It was fun. But
totally. Then
the communities that I'm involved with here in Lincoln, they also tried really hard to keep us all connected while we were scattered everywhere. So Engler did a lot of just weekly Zooms and meetups to check in, and they would send us things in the mail and make sure that we knew as students that Engler hadn't forgotten about us. So that was really special. But then I'm also active at the Lutheran Center here on campus, and they kind of did a similar thing. So they did, I don't really know if they called it office hours or what they called it, but it was just like one of the staff members, they had 3 full-time staff members at the time. One of them would pick like a day of the week, and it was just an hour, and you could Zoom and talk about whatever. And I remember one day I got on, and once again, I was on the farm, so there was lots of random things that you can do that you can't do when you're in town. And they were all bored out of their mind, and they asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, I'm actually just getting out my drone. I have a DJI Phantom 4 at home, and I was like, I'm just going to fly it because there's not much else to do. And they were asking, well, could we like see it over Zoom? And so I thought about how I could share my screen with them, and I shared my screen with them, and I gave them a virtual tour, I guess you could say, of our farm, just flew it up so they could see everything. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight. So
super fun. Memorable moments for sure. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking of how much of this is history in the making and stories that I picture you telling your kids and grandkids one day, most likely.
Yeah. It's crazy to think about just what the history books will say about us someday. Because when I was a kid, I used to think, oh, there's not going to be anything to write about during our time. There is definitely stuff to write about now.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what I'm most excited about in this episode. To talk about what you and your family did to start during the pandemic when you were home. So to my understanding, you built a movie screen and had people bring their trucks out and watch movies. So tell us all about that start to finish, how you got the idea, how you built it, and what that was like to invite people there.
Yeah, so it was actually my dad's idea, so I can't take too much credit for it. But he's always been someone that likes to kind of tinker with new ideas and stuff at the farm. So he has his own repair business and repairs all of our machinery and stuff. He's built random new pieces to help with more of the agricultural stuff, but he's never, at least to my knowledge, we've never done a big random non-farm project. But he was just like, what can we do to bring people together, but we can't be inside anymore? And I don't know how he came up with the idea of a movie screen, but he's always kind of talked about how it'd be fun, because we used to, as kids, we wouldn't go a lot, but I remember maybe once a year, give or take, we would go up to the drive-in in Neely, and we would watch movies for my brother's birthday. and it was always a lot of fun. So I think he wanted to just bring that back a little bit, and so he has a friend of his that works at Balin's Manufacturing in Columbus, so he started talking to him about what type of materials we could get to build a screen, and the hardest part actually was just finding a projector. So I think we got it at Best Buy maybe or something like that. So it's just a big, like, wide projector. It's probably like 1 foot by 2 foot, maybe, give or take. And so we have these tables that my dad also made out of just like big oil, like fuel tank can things, and then just put a tabletop on the top. So we set that outside with the projector. And actually our first movie screen was just a tarp that we spray painted white, and we threw it over. We stacked round hay bales up, and we just threw it over that. And that was our first movie night, actually.
Wow.
And then my dad went back to, like, his friend and was like, we can make a sturdy one, I think. We can do a lot of cool things here. So we just got steel tubing as the frame for it, and then we got just, like, sheet metal to kind of be the screen part of it, and we just made different rectangles out of the tubing, so it's like a 2x4 grid of these rectangles.
Yeah.
And then it folds in half, so he hooked up these cables and wires to it so you can run it with a battery to run it up and down, because before we had that on it, it was just this weird maneuvering with our payloader and stuff where you would just go up and back until it was up. So it's kind of been a little bit of an improvement each time. But now, long story short, we have this pretty developed movie screen, and we've watched movies. Not a ton, maybe like 5 to 7 times on it, but actually the most fun thing that we've done with it is the FCCLA program at my high school, Twin River. They do an annual, they've done it twice, they've done an annual movie night, and so it's just out in our pasture right next to our house, and they'll just do 2 movies as soon as it gets dark, and then it's just free will donation, and then they use that money like it's one of their fundraisers. That is
awesome.
So, yeah, and they plan to do it every year moving forward for the foreseeable future. So
wow,
it's a lot of fun.
That's a really incredible testament of things that started because of the pandemic that are very powerful moving forward. Like what you just said, that was started as kind of a reaction, like, okay, let's do something.
Yeah. And it was interesting because in the pandemic, all of a sudden, and I've done this too, like, you start using the excuse, I don't have time to, do this fun thing that I've always wanted. Well, all of a sudden, we all had all the time in the world. So it was kind of cool to see one of the projects that's always just been, like, in the back of my dad's mind, like, actually come to fruition because of that. So
totally.
Cool.
That is so awesome. So good. So how many people will come out for the school organization?
Well, I wasn't at the last one, so I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they said, I could be completely wrong, but I heard that there was like 125. I don't remember if they said cars or people, awesome. But I don't know how you would guesstimate people, but there was a lot. And I know the first time we did it, there was way more people than we all expected. And actually, there's a barbecue truck in town, and they came out and like parked, and they did money, and then somebody, the produce stand or company around there, Daniel's Produce, donated popcorn, so like we actually got to serve popcorn and stuff. So the
whole community coming together.
I know, yeah, and like porta potties got sent out there. It was just like, I was like, this is way more fancy than I know what to do with.
Totally.
Yeah, so they really get into it. They love it.
Yeah, I feel like your mech systems major probably came in handy too, and the setup and playing with all of that too.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I'm the lightest one out of my family, so some of the stuff you had to do when the sheet was like laying down on the ground, you had to crawl into the middle of it on the beam in the middle and like do random things. Like it's not super important, but I had to crawl all around this movie screen to get it fixed because I was the lightest one, and I was like, I'm also probably the clumsiest, so I don't know why you guys think this is a good idea for me to do it, but it worked out.
The chosen one,
yeah. And haven't broken yet, so.
That's super awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this story. It's very powerful to hear awesome moments that were created, and I'm sure if we asked each person that was there, they would have a unique story of the experience there during the pandemic, and I just imagine this being so memorable for all the people that came and your community as a whole to have this experience during such a confusing time. So I have 2 more questions in closing. Number 1, what did the pandemic teach you?
So one thing that I learned is that when I panic, I try to just grab control of whatever I can grab control of, which at the time was kind of people around me. Like, I would try to just tell them what they can and can't do. And the reality is, like, this was obviously an extreme version, but life's going to continue to throw you things, and you have to understand how you react in these situations so you can control your own reactions to it, kind of. So that doesn't fully make sense, but just starting to develop some self-awareness was really eye-opening for me during that time, and it's been really beneficial for me moving forward.
Totally. And my last question for you is kind of a fun question. So what is a hill that you are willing to die on? So what is something that you feel super strong about?
Oh, man. Well, I always say this. I give tours of East Campus here, and I always will tell when I show them the bowling alley in the Union here on East Campus, I'll always say that Nebraska is a bowling and a volleyball school and not a football school like people like to think. And that is a hill I will die on.
That's awesome. Good stuff. Thanks so much, Court, for being willing to talk with us today and share a bit of your experience. I'm actually going to ask you one more question because as you're talking, I'm just looking at you and I'm like, man, I'm so excited to see what's next for Court in her journey. And I would love to hear how you will be taking the mindset of an entrepreneur with you in your future, no matter what you do. You're graduating soon, and you don't know what's next, but in this, no matter where you end up, what does that mean for you to be an entrepreneur?
I have really enjoyed just the open-mindedness and the collaboration that the entrepreneurship program has taught, and regardless of what I do, I just look at like group projects even in school like differently now than I did before I started Engler. So the entrepreneurial mindset, I literally talk up the Engler program to every visit that I go on, because they will meet you where you're at, and whether you believe it or not, entrepreneurship trickles into every aspect of life. So I feel that I'll use it in my full-time job, but then also I do think I'll start a side hustle or something someday. I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but I definitely have the dreams in my mind, and I'm looking forward to putting them into action just because of what I've learned here in the community that I've developed here, and I know that they will push me to do it someday.
And we can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you.
All right, that's all we got, folks. Courtney Nelson for you. If you found your way to this episode, my belief is that you did not find the Engler Journey Podcast by mistake. Maybe you're someone who has had a business idea for a long time but has never had the time to do it, or you're someone who has had people in your life tell you that you're too crazy to pursue the thing that you believe you were made to do. I'm here to tell you that it is time to start. Keep listening, keep plugging into this community, and keep starting. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend so we can keep building people, building businesses, and building community through this podcast.